having spent 25 years in the IT ecosystem, I can tell you that it's very vast and wide, and there's customers, there's public sector, there's service providers, there's government, there's so many areas you can go work at, VARs, value-added resellers, for those that don't understand that acronym, but there's like managed service providers and also these technology companies, and also Fortune 500 companies. So opportunities are endless. And to kind of close this question up is around that upskilling or reskilling that I've seen working with executives is that they are okay with hiring college grads, but what they're finding is that the college grads don't have enough hands-on training.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Business Roundtable podcast show. This is a podcast show dedicated to shining a spotlight on tech innovators, entrepreneurs, founders, and the compelling narratives behind the movements they've established. I'm your host, Ryan Davies, and I'm hosting today's discussion on the IT career journey and upskilling for executives with my guest, Terry Kim. Terry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be on the show.
Really excited to dig into this topic with you. A little bit about Terry for our listeners. He is a mission-driven CEO working on reinventing higher tech education and making it more accessible to the people. He is the founder of NexGenT and the Zero to Engineer training framework methodologies, and he's trained thousands of engineers for the U.S. Air Force and has worked at Cisco Systems, Arista Networks as a systems engineer prior to founding NexGenT. And you're very passionate about solving some incredibly huge problems at a large scale around poverty, education, climate change, providing the world access to clean water. In order to do all of those great things, I mean, you've had quite a career journey that's brought you to here. So for our listeners, fill us in a little bit more about your career path and your career journey to date.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thanks. So, I'll go back to, I guess, when I was 20 years old, and it was back, I'm kind of dating myself here. 1999 is when I watched the movie Matrix, and I was hooked on just this concept of a future of just so much technology. And it really got me excited, and that sparked my first interest in the world of information technology. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a job at the time. In IT, the MIS department wanted a bachelor's degree and experience and all that. And I was thinking to myself, how does a high school dropout break into this world of tech? And believe it or not, you can break into this world of IT without a college degree. And that's what I put in my blueprint, in my book, Zero to Engineer, the story of the American dream. This is my origin story, and it talks about how you can break into this field with real world training and mentorship and a couple IT certifications just to break your way into the field. My entry point was the Air Force. So instead of going to college for 4 years, I decided to cut my teeth in the United States Air Force. And I waited 6 months for a job called the 3C2. It was a network controller position with a top secret clearance. And the recruiter actually sold me on the idea that I could possibly work on the Air Force One and set up all communications for the president. And that really got me excited. And I joined the Air Force, started on the help desk, and worked my way to a network engineer, and eventually becoming a network technical instructor on Keesler Air Force Base. And that's where I would train basically high school graduates, 18, 19, 20-year-olds in 4 months to become engineers in the battlefield. And that's where I really understood that you can learn these trade skills or IT skill sets in a matter of months, not years, and not have to put yourself through a 4 or 6 year education system in order to break into this field. So I cut my teeth in the Air Force and then got out as a network engineer and instructor. And my dream job at 21, actually, when I joined the Air Force, when I did all this research, was I discovered this company called Cisco Systems, and they were basically building the plumbing of the internet, I thought, and the infrastructure to support all this vast technology that was going to be, online. And back, just to kind of give you some context, 1999, there's 1 million devices connected. Now we have over 20 billion devices connected to the World Wide Web. So you can see how much drastic innovation and changes happen since I started my career back in 2000, and now we're sitting here in 2023 talking about this. So yeah, that was kind of my career path. Air Force, got out, worked my way up into a senior network engineer role, and then eventually got recruited by Cisco at age like 31 or 32, and got into my dream job. And that's how I broke into this field.
It's amazing. And I mean, I think that's a great, conversation around. You hear a lot of, no, you need your diplomas, you need your degrees, you need to kind of go through all this. But part of whether you're a executive and you're upskilling, or whether you're an executive and you're trying to hire and fill positions, there's a lot to be said for hands-on training and the benefits that provides. So tell us about, some of the instances you've seen around that, where you've been able to see some very successful companies, do some great hires and really upskill people by, throwing them into the fire a little bit and giving them that hands-on training, as opposed to, maybe the more expensive hires out of school and things like that, and help not only upskill those people, but upskill your entire workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the go-getters that are really self-taught and quickly learn that like adding value to any IT organization is projects. So instead of looking at the IT center as a cost center or for technical support, the mindset is that you have to shift your perspective and understand that if you as an IT worker are adding value and working on the most cutting edge technologies and projects, you're going to solve a lot of business problems and give that business an edge against their competitors. So that's what I always advise our students or any engineers or aspiring IT pros that I've mentored over the past decades, is that it's around projects that's going to add a lot of value, and a lot of it is the self-education. How are you keeping up with the latest technology that Cisco or Amazon or Microsoft has to offer? Are you keeping up with the certifications? And a lot of students make the mistake is they plateau and they kind of hit a ceiling, and that's really, it's because of them, their lack of motivation to step up and move up inside the IT ecosystem. Having spent 25 years in the IT ecosystem, I can tell you that it's very vast and wide, and there's customers, there's public sector, there's service providers, there's government, there's so many areas you can go work at, VARs, value-added resellers, for those that don't understand that acronym. But there's like managed service providers, and also these technology companies, and also Fortune 500 companies. So opportunities are endless. And to kind of close this question up is around that upskilling or reskilling that I've seen working with executives, is that they are okay with hiring college grads, but what they're finding is that the college grads don't have enough hands-on training. So, and that's a fundamentally different approach to how we train in the military versus how we train in the civilian sector. In the military, it's about, does this person have the job skills in order to be job ready on day one? And reading a bunch of books and understanding theories is not going to cut it. You have to get your hands on experience, and that means rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty, like any vocational job. Imagine if you had to go to college to be a car mechanic. That would be a nightmare, right? Or having to get an MBA to be a car mechanic or a hair salonist or a casino dealer. All these type of training is around hands-on, it's practical, it's real world based. And what we found in at least in the organization where I worked at, is if executives can create a concrete upskilling program where they can take their interns or apprenticeship or junior workforce and give them the proper training and proper projects, it's going to upskill them. So they don't have to look for other education opportunities or certs or opportunities and jump ship, because that's what we see, is that the guys that are making the 100 to 200 to 250K, they're just moving around different organizations. But what organizations need is a awesome apprenticeship program that they can seed inside that organization and then upskill and also cross train on different technologies. So that would be my advice.
That's amazing. And I think, you're a very big believer, obviously, in then continuous improvement and continuous growth, right? So I know that's something that you talk about quite passionately, and the need for it and a system for it. Maybe you can shed some light on that as well to, for some executives that are looking for some advice around that area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you build a team, it's all about like working on the latest technologies. That's what drew me into IT in the first place. So if you have an IT workforce that um, is really gun ho about the company's mission and the different IT projects, how do you inspire them? How do you push them to level up and continuously improve? And here at NGT Academy, we have a company value that is called Kaizen. And it's also in chapter 3 on habits and rituals inside this book, where I break down this concept of Kaizen. And Kaizen's a Japanese concept that the Toyota manufacturing actually brought to the Western world back in the early 1900s. And it's around continuous improvement. So they had an assembly line, and whenever something bad would happen or a fault, they would raise a red flag, and the entire basically manufacturing plant would stop. They would fix that, improve it, see how they can make it better, and then they would turn that cycle back on, and they would continue to rinse and repeat this for creating efficiency and productivity. And when we look at the concept of just habits and rituals, it's like, how are you growing every day, right? And Kaizen can be broken down into improvement, quality, advancing your career, continuous learning, finding success in reaching your goals, and then implementation success. So it's like, if you have any problem in your business, you can take that one problem, analyze it, find a way to make it better, and then continue to do that. And I can give you a perfect example is like, let's talk about fitness for a second, just as a perfect metaphor. I might not be able to do one pull-up today, but I'm going to try to do one pull-up. And let's say I might be able to accomplish that. Guess what? Tomorrow I can try to go for 2 pull-ups. And this power of compound interest is so effective that the math equates to, if you can improve 1% every day, in 365 days, you would have improved that particular area of your life by 37x. How wild is that?
Yeah. That's I mean, first of all, it's a great message for me to remember to go and work out after we're done our conversation here, because I was being lazy before and thinking, you know what, it's Monday, I might just kick this down the road until tomorrow and start fresh. Now it's like, nope, you're right. It's those gradual improvements and continuing to see results and experiencing new highs. You're breaking new barriers and doing that. And I think that's a lot of what upskilling is as well. And maybe
Yes.
from the executive standpoint, right? Like, do you see a lot of executives abandoning their own upskilling in order to maybe invest in other areas, or they just get stretched too thin? And is there an importance that you would say that executives take that time and set it aside to ensure that they're upskilling not just their teams or their processes, but themselves personally as well?
Absolutely. So I think management is like a top-down thing, that like, if the leader has these values, it's going to kind of affect the team as well. So it's like, how do you vision yourself building this team? Are you looking to build a small team for maintenance and support, or are you really trying to innovate within your IT department? Now, if you say, I want to innovate and I want to build this team in-house, then you need to basically groom and bring up a team of subject matter experts in all areas of your business. Or you're going to have to rely on heavy consultants that you're going to pay $250, $300 an hour to bring in those subject matter advisory. So there's 2 ways to approach it, right? Build a team in-house or rely on heavy consultants. My recommendation is to build that team in-house, so you have rock star candidates that can reduce your barrier to entry to innovate or to do certain key projects that you might pay 2 to 4x more because you don't have that in-house team.
Where do you see executives kind of, I guess not, I don't want to say failing, but maybe it's like, they're having setbacks in this. Is it, they don't know where to start? Is it they get overwhelmed with the process? Is it that they don't have a documented process? I'm sure there's endless list of traps and things that you see, but are there certain things where you say, hey, here's where you need it, and here's what's going to get you started? Again, where's that first pull-up coming from?
Yes, that's a great question. What I've seen interacting with a lot of CIOs and VPs, it really depends on the organization and how big they are. But there are in constant battle of solving business solutions, working with vendors, working with consultants, contractors, also trying to build their team up. I think sometimes they do lack certain standard operating procedures or playbooks when they're looking at innovating with new projects. So I think, it's good to build self-awareness and really audit your team and really figure out, maybe even do a SWOT analysis, right, of strengths and weaknesses across your team. And where are you deficient in terms of skill sets? Maybe you're deficient in AI or cybersecurity, maybe more on the offense, maybe on the defense. Like, how are you going about auditing your processes, your SOPs, and your playbooks? And also, most importantly, your talent. How are you retaining the talent? How are you upskilling that talent? And if you're not doing that, then how are you relying on, delivering world-class projects to your business? Maybe it's consultants. And so that's something that I highly recommend that executives and managers do, is auditing their team and trying to assess where they're deficient at, and are they innovating, or are they just part of another BU that's just looked at as a cost center? Because I've seen that happen a lot of time, where a lot of VPs or CIOs might be just comfortable, right? Lack of better word, just comfortable with what they have, and they're not looking to push the boundary of trying to innovate because they're scared to spend money, so to speak. And I've
Yeah.
seen that really hurt organizations as well.
One of those things where it's hard to prove an ROI on it until you look back, and it's like a soft skill, right? Sometimes you're like, well, a soft skill is not easily quantifiable or measurable. But again, when you look back and you go, well, look at the turnover that happened here, or look at the hiring costs, that we have to go through, and the time that the hours it takes to interview people and hire and onboard and train, only to have them go somewhere else because we're not providing for them, right? So I know that
Yes.
you're a big proponent in coaching and mentorship, and that's kind of that basis and that skill set. So again, tell me a little bit more about your examples around the how you see successful coaching, successful mentorship in action, how people can measure it, because it's really hard to do that, right?
Yes, it is hard to do if there is no documentation. So one, building a system, like what are you going to use to document areas where you are providing coaching, and then following up with that coaching to see how they've improved. So, one is like making sure that you have KPIs that you're measuring, a 1 through 10. Maybe it is these 100 skills that you want your frontline tier 1 to work on, right? Maybe it's IT certifications that you want people to work on so they can upskill in maybe some cloud technologies. And I don't like the fact that we measure sometimes in the IT world of people that have the most certs, because it's not about the certs. The skills are really in the project. So, if you're an executive, it's getting your team to shadow some of the senior consultants that you're bringing in-house. It's maybe pulling them into more strategic meetings, to your IT steering committee or to your IT budget planning process. That way you can really groom them and coach them, because it's your team at the end of the day. So instead of looking them as a support or cost center or a headcount, it's like, no, how am I going to groom this person to become a manager one day, or to become a senior project leader on my IT team? And when you start asking these questions, I think the answers come to you, and it's pretty common sense. It's just about implementing it and getting it into practice.
So with that in mind, I mean, I think a great kind of follow up to that is, you mentioned, IT certifications could almost be considered a commodity now, right? So
Yes.
with that in mind, like what areas are you seeing the innovators upskilling in now, and what should you really be focused on, if not obtaining more certifications and that sort of side of things?
Yeah, I think other areas that managers can really improve, or even individuals inside IT, is to work on more meaningful projects. So that's adding value, one. And then two is really the executives focusing on um, even EQ skills, right? Outside of technical skills, sure, your team knows how to do XYZ commands on a certain device, but how about participating in business meetings? How about being able to do research on trending technologies and analyzing, the upsides and the downsides of looking at this particular set of technologies. Otherwise, inside IT, if you're not always on the bleeding or cutting edge, I would say you're going to be left behind and you're not going to have any value to add. So whether you're a CIO, whether you're an engineer, or maybe you're on a help desk, listen to this and you want to move up, find ways to add value, not only across the team, but for the organization itself. And the best way you can add value is by working on personal development. And outside of technical skills, it's the emotional intelligence, it's the business acumen. I think these other skills are sometimes not looked at. And when I realized, wow, I need to learn some business acumen, like what the CFO is saying, what the VP is saying, I need to start really understanding how innovation works, how these technologies can really change this business unit's, you know, SOPs and playbook quite differently. And I'll give you a perfect example. When I was working at a credit union, they were considered in the dinosaur ages because they didn't refresh their technology for 20 years, but they justified it because it was like, it's still working. If it's working, let's not touch it, right? Let's
Yeah.
just keep it the way it is. And that is a recipe for disaster because you will be obsolete, just like how Blockbuster is no longer around today because they forgot to innovate with Netflix and to be able to compete with them. So that's the challenge, and that challenge creates an amazing opportunity for all those that are listening to be able to add massive value and work your way up the corporate ladder and work on the latest cutting edge technologies. Like, who doesn't want to do that?
Right. I literally just watched BlackBerry last night for a story about adapt or die, right? Where it's like, well, everyone
Yeah.
wants the keyboard on their phone and no one's ever going to get away from us. No one wants to type on a screen. And sure enough, right? It's don't get too caught up in yourself and make sure you're making those adaptations to make it better for, again, provide the value, right? And for the leader side of things here, I want to touch on the fact of, you make a point of development and providing resources and things like that, coaching, mentoring. So I'm assuming in your world that means, a, like you just said, access to what's important to them. You don't want to be holding all your cards close to the chest sitting in the C-level suites or the VP rooms, right? But also providing resources. So what type of resources and access do you see from successful companies, where people are saying, great, I can take advantage of this? What sort of things do you see in place?
Yeah, so regarding upskilling, we at NGT Academy work with enterprises where we'll seed in a apprenticeship program, taking, existing entry-level folks on their team instead of seeing them, leave the organization. It's like, how do you retain your tier one guys and
Yep.
upskill them? Because why? They already know the mission, they already know your team, and you've been working with them. But I promise you, they don't want to stay stuck in that position for 10 years, right? So creating a plan where in 2 years they can move up, and then maybe another 3 they can move up. So showing a 4 to 6 year career roadmap going up the organization is going to be very important. And you're going to expect turnover and have turnover. So why not create an awesome in-house program where you can cross-train and upskill? It's almost like, imagine this. Imagine instead of a pyramid, your top tier guys, you have 1 or 2, but what if he leaves? Then it all kind of crumbles. But have your top tier guys mentor the mid-tier guys, have your mid-tier guys train your tier one guys, and it starts pulling up the talent up house. And what I found is that that's a very healthy way to create a solid team with a redundancy, with backup, and to make sure that knowledge is getting shared in-house, because a lot of people will hoard that knowledge. It'd be like one guy has
Yeah.
all the keys to the castle, and if he leaves, Like they're in a world of trouble. Like, and I think that's where I see the worst planning around CIOs and executives is they have one or two guys holding all the keys to the castle. Why not build a solid team, build in redundancy, share that knowledge base, make it easy for the entire team to share that. And I think that's a better approach to upskilling and reskilling, and then assign them more projects. Have your bottom and mid-tier guys be the support for some of the big projects that the top guys, your one or two guys, are leading on versus just working with the vendors and account managers. And project-based training is the most beneficial for your team, period. And shadowing, and that requires a lot of shadowing and knowledge transfer. And I say documentation is another key aspect of training, and then making sure that they're staying up to date by sending them to the latest conferences, working with training providers like ours or someone else's to really keep them sharp, right? That's important. So training shouldn't be like once a year or once a quarter thought process. It should actually be, I believe, 20% of the work hours. So, maybe carving out 1 day a week or 2 hours a day where your team is all they're doing is learning new skills.
I love that. And I think that's, again, it's one of those things. If you don't put it in your calendar, it doesn't happen. If you don't plan for it, it's not going to work. And I've seen the most successful companies, and I've heard it myself. Well, if you want to move up, you better have somebody ready to replace you, right? So that's kind of that point there, right? So with that, what I'd love to do is kind of turn it over to you a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about NGT Academy, about the book, and how people can get in contact with you and learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started NGT Academy in 2016, and the idea was, wow, these colleges are charging $80,000 to $100,000 for a 4-year bachelor's degree in networking or cybersecurity. And I just absolutely thought that was ludicrous. And I actually thought it was like a scam. I was like, this is crazy. Like these nonprofits, two-profit organizations. And I don't know if you recall the late night commercials from ITT Tech.
Oh, yes. Yep.
So they were huge. And I was, at Cisco at the time, at the top of my career, I was like, that's BS, right? And in 2016, they got shut down. The same year we started NGT Academy, NexGenT. And, it was like, we need to provide an alternative to college. Like this, me and my co-founder, we both were instructors. He served 8, I served 5. We knew it could be done in a matter of months and not 4 years.
Right.
So it really was a burning passion of mine to bring this out to the world. Because if I was 21 and I saw this program in NGT, you can train in 4 months versus 4 years, I would have skipped the whole Air Force and saved myself a lot of trouble and time. But no, the Air Force was good to me. This book will teach you how to break into IT without a college degree. It comes with a bonus certification course, the CompTIA Network Plus. It's the #1 certification I recommend if you're just getting started in IT. And a lot of also, rookie mistakes I would avoid is getting the A+. A lot of newcomers come to me and like, hey, I'm studying for the A+. Well, guess what? If you get that A+, you're going to get pigeonhole yourself into the help desk. How about another path that could give you probably 2 times more the pay to start off as a junior engineer? And that's what I teach you in this book. And not only do I teach you the pathways, the ecosystems, but I give you my personal stories of how I climbed the corporate ladder, how I went from 28,000 to breaking 6 figures in just 23 months. And I lay out the entire blueprint. And you'll also learn about mindset and also the Kaizen principles. So different strategies and frameworks that I actually use to not only study, but to accomplish all these goals that, was my American dream.
I think it's absolutely, perfect for anybody, whether you're starting out, whether you're an executive, there is something there for you for sure. Zero to Engineer is the book. NGT.academy is the website to go and check out to learn more about Terry Kim and all of the great things he's done and he provides to you for upskilling, to your staff for upskilling, and how to build that plan of, as he said, succession and retention. The cost of retention is so much lower than trying to acquire and poach new talent. So Terry, I want to thank you so much for sharing this with us today. I think we've got a lot more topics we could cover in the future as well. So hoping to have you back again and cover some more off. That'd be great. Thanks so much, Terry.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, for having me on the show. And yeah, if you want to start a career in IT, it's never too late. We've helped 18-year-olds to even 64-year-olds break into this field. And so Zero to Engineer, you can grab the full book actually on zerotoengineer.com/book. If you visit that link, you can get it absolutely free and just pay for shipping and handling, and we'll ship that book to you. And any executives listening, if you want us to help you with an apprenticeship program, upskilling, we cover network engineering, cybersecurity, data science, AI, machine learning, product UI, UX, and I'm missing one. Product UI, UX, and DevOps and cloud is getting super hot. So we have that track that's launching here in December. So thanks, Ryan, again for having me on the show. It was a blast.
I absolutely love it, Terry. Kim, thank you again. I want to thank you for this amazing podcast, IT Career Journey and Upskilling for Executives. And I also want to thank our listeners. We can't do what we do without you. So until we meet again with another amazing TBR episode, I'm your host, Ryan Davies. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.